sorry to shut down the main house, and we've ever seen the 6-year-old, so they will put us back by the tanks and the actual brewery. They'll work us in and then
All right.
we should be
I'm gonna welcome everybody before Tony yells at me, because we're supposed to get started here. All right, thanks to everyone for coming out today. This month and next month are just solely open mic. There are no features because I'm not gonna invite someone from even relatively closely out of town because we don't know what the weather's gonna do between now and March. So this month and next month are just open mics. Next month's open mic date, I said it this morning, it's gonna be February 22nd at 6 o'clock, which is, I don't know, I think that may be the last, yeah, this is the last Saturday of the month. Does anybody have any announcements? Agnes, do you have anything you want to tell people about what you're doing?
Okay, sure. So Poetry Pop-Rama, third Tuesday of the month, at least through April, and then our schedule gets a little wackier. And next month we are on the 18th. We'll have Gary Bauer and Richard Stimmick as our features, and the exciting news is at the Puffle Models, and we will be in an accessible ground floor location, and there were some people phoning the stairs were an obstacle, and I hope come February, no more stairs for Poetry. That's exciting.
Awesome. Okay, we are, as the year progresses here, like March 8th, we're gonna have someone in who I've known since I was a teenager, a gentleman named Murray Thomas. And Murray, for years, lived in Long Beach, California. He used to host his own public radio show. But his family is actually from Belle. And so he's coming back to visit family. His cousin, Stuart, was the mayor of Belle when I got here. So he's just really excited. He asked me if he could be here. And since I've known him so long, it's exciting for me to have him here. And he's going to be here March 8th, because that's when he could be here.
At 6 o'clock, at the regular time?
What's that?
At 6, at the regular time? Is it?
Yeah, 6 o'clock.
Okay.
6 o'clock, March 8th. Yeah, I think he's going to be in town for like a week because he's just going to visit family. So, and then in February, I should be able to tell you hopefully the schedule for the bulk of this year. I can announce, I'm sure Mark has no problem with this, that we got some grant funding from Walmart. And we applied for them before, and we
$2,000.
Yes, and so that money is going to go towards bringing in more features here. There are a lot of people I've wanted to get here over the years that we could just not get here, and the difference is just between not being able to offer someone any money and maybe then offering them like $100, $200. It's not really a huge amount of money, but it's enough that's made a difference, and we're going to be able to bring those folks in, and I'm really excited about that. I'm grateful to Mark for doing that. I will say that I did not apply for this grant. Mark did the work.
And Ed,
So-
and Dealer Health, a lot, and Tony, thank you.
Yeah, so we're just grateful that you did that. We're gonna bring in some really interesting people. Jason and I were having a discussion earlier today about what the possibilities were, who we could get. So it's gonna be interesting. But all of that said, is there anyone here that wants to be a part of this open mic that is not currently signed up on this list? If you're not, put your name on here, and I will just call off of here.
John, I want to make an announcement.
Sure, go right ahead.
Just to refresh, I haven't talked about this in a while, about our book sales. Brenda, Jason, and Gary have books for sale. All the authors, you don't have to be a feature to have your books here. So just bring your book. We don't take a cut. If you're here, because people sometimes, like you don't necessarily have your book when it's released for some reason. And if you have the book and somebody's like, hey, I want to get your book, and then you have it here. So just think, hey, I'll bring the books to the open mic and just make it available.
Yeah,
That's how we are.
we always want stuff on that table.
Right. And OAC's inventory's there, but I'm totally fine with bringing some of that off, and so you guys can have that space. So you don't have to be a feature, you don't even have to read, but just bring it here for the group to have access to your work. That's what we want. So, and again, we don't take a cut. We're happy that you're selling the work. So I just wanted to refresh that because I haven't talked about that in a very long time. But we're really happy to have you guys sell your work. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And I just want to reiterate what Agnes said in support of Gary. February 18th, Gary will be reading at the Rolla Public House with my friend Richard Steinmack, and that should be a really good time. Now, Agnes, is it going to be like a lower level since it's not going to be?
The main pub room, they are expanding next door.
Oh, okay.
So they want to make a tap room basically in the adjacent building, and they're working on it. And that is what they said, where they will host the poetry at the pub, because the main pub will still be in existence and open. Only in February, they may be in that in-between stage when they have to close down the main pub to do the kitchen renovation, and they cannot give us the tap room, and then they will put us behind the tap room through the glass door where the actual brewery is, because they moved the brewery and there's all the tanks. And I said, poetry's portable. Poetry goes where poetry needs to go, and she thought that was absolutely fantastic. So poetry's portable, and we will be in the brewery.
Well, there you go.
The stairs will be gone.
And the stairs will be still there, but not for us. We won't have to go upstairs anymore.
That's okay, they can stay.
Yeah, so, and yeah.
All right. Well, with that, I'm going to start welcoming people up here to read. I'm so glad to have so many of you here today, just because it's January, and it's 2024 was a rough year anyway. But this weather could be terrible today, but we are very lucky. Last year I read in Chicago in January, and it was beautiful. And this year was like -25 on the same day, so you never know. All right. And with that, I'm going to welcome up someone I have not seen in a while. Not that I see that many people outside of Jace Reaper, but I'm going to welcome up Brenda.
I'm going to read a couple of new works. This one's called Secure Admiration. Secure admiration in unfamiliar paths, into burrows and out of draining colors, where riverbanks meet trenches of indecision deep, deep, deep. Into unfamiliar channels, deep into the fractals of the brain, where sensory input melds into a higher awareness of temporal spaces, spaces of discovery, looking on with consideration, separating plans from action. This one's called Lizard's Leap. Lizards leap to a precipice, the sun completes a cycle, and orange marmalade covers sundials in the shade. Who notices white daisies and moss-covered chocolate? Just a day, and yet here we are, existing in a vestibule of dim light, transforming and straining for full disclosure, extending the capacity of natural science, where portals are actually larger than fractals. This one's called Beyond Black Holes. Crazy warriors march through trenches and vines into a space between stars and galaxies, wandering into black liquid as thick as armor and as fragile as stardust, fighting against time as moons forget their orbits and lost galaxies reemerge into pixels, and the universe reorganizes and the planets align as the deep soul is connected to concepts beyond black holes. And this one's from my new book, Birds in Flight. St. Louis South Side, the California Donut Company will not reopen after all. Gas pumping at the neighborhood 7-Eleven, Dollar General plastic bags float in a CO2 breeze, the Big Four Chevrolet gone, Giuliani's Carnival Supply gone, Buildings decayed, boarded up. There are 75,000 bees located at the Jefferson Underground, and barn swallows hundreds. Though the sweet machine-fried donuts are no more, and newspapers cover the windows, still there is a neon sign, but it is dark in this urban contrast where swallows remain. And then I want to share a poem from another poet, Anne Manabroker.
Oh, one of my dear friends.
Okay, she's passed away.
Yeah, in 2016.
Yeah.
We were close friends for about the last 12 years of her life.
Her granddaughter published one of her poems,
Oh,
A
great.
Broadside. The poem that was magnificent came over email, came like the earth shaking around you, came like a flood of beautiful language. It could never be a haiku or close to a tanka. It would be Mount Kilimanjaro in Tanzania. It would be adjectives and gospel truth. It would be deep river honesty. It would be the mosquito and the leopard. It would sting. It would eat flesh. It would sing arias and balance 12 moons. It would be valet service to your first appetite. It would make you not want to be a poet anymore, but to be the poet's material. It would be like the first time your child came to you and called you its own country.
If you're ever looking for a book of hers, Tiny Teeth is such a good book. The first time she and I were talked on the phone, people called her Annie. Everyone called her Annie. And I asked to speak to Anne when I called her on the phone, and then she told me years later, she's like, yeah, when you called me because you said Anne, I thought you were from the credit card company. So,
Anyway,
yeah, she's a wonderful lady. All right. Do you have the notebook there, Brenda? With
Oh.
everyone else's name?
Oh, did I have that over here?
Thank you.
So now you know where she gets her paper.
Gets it the old-fashioned, steals it. All right. And because I mentioned this gentleman already, I am going to welcome up Gary Gowers. Gary.
I know I wasn't
Oh, you're on the old list. Your books are here, so.
He never goes in order, Gary.
I know.
It's his thing.
Keeps you on your toes.
He does. He's the puppet master. Got my third one just came out. It's called 73 Nomad. I just want to say, where'd Mark just go? Over the past year, this is the third one I put out, and they don't get enough credit, Mark and Tony, for giving us residents the chance to be as prolific as we are. So
Welcome.
I just want to say thank you again for that.
You're welcome.
And this past year was really bad because there were health issues and my mother passed. So it was good to have a safe place to work and not have to worry about the daily crap that you gotta worry about. And I'll always thank them for that. So, much appreciated. This is the third one. It's called 73 Nomad, and this is a picture I took, and I lived in that thing for a year. Yeah. Because I was nuts. There, take that off. My cheese slipped off my cracker a little bit. And doctors put me on pills, and they made me a different person. I didn't like that. So I decided to do something about it on my own. I went off the pills, and I did this. It's called 73 Nomad. With a shattered brain and a nearly depleted spirit, I took up residence in a 73 Nomad camper behind my brother's garage. No bathroom, no water, no heat, just a single extension cord giving the illusion of modernity. The 73 Nomad was my last stand. I moved in to punish myself for all my weaknesses and to push the envelope on my mortality. Sink or swim, Gary boy, until you get your mind right. Adjust that fatalistic attitude of yours. Until you get your mind right, adjust that fatalistic attitude of yours. You'll cut trees and carry wood, sleep in your own filth, piss in the yard, eat microwave sandwiches from Dollar General, forego any kind of comfort physically until you straighten yourself out mentally. Live or die time, dipshit. So life became a series of self-flagellant punishments. The height of summer, a superabundance of flies drawn to the stench of my work clothes, eaten alive by swarms of gnats and mosquitoes, curious mice nipping at me in the night. The dead of winter, winds whipping through my aluminum box, sleeping fully clothed, shivering under a mound of Indian blankets, while my coffee froze solid in its cup. These extremes were my normal, and I spent my non-working hours sitting, baking or freezing, on a hard bench, thinking about all the ways in which I had gone wrong, kicking myself for my stupidity and denial, raking myself over the coals, plunging my spirit into ice water for minutes at a time, slapping myself silly with stark realities until it was enough. I could think again, see again, and I could leave the 73 nomad, gather my things, and get on with it.
What happened to that nomad, Gary?
It got scratched. My brother hauled it in, and
That's
it
so,
was like $100 or something for it.
that's so sad.
Oh, dude, it was not livable. I got a couple here for vets. One was my grandpa. My grandpa Ellis, my dad's dad. It's called Country Boy at War. You lost half of your hearing shooting big guns at little people amidst medium-sized mountains. You left the convoy to shit in the woods. As you squatted in the sonamu, that's pine trees, body parts rained down on you after a wounded comrade on a stretcher triggered a mine. You thought the Gurkhas were the scariest fuckers you'd ever seen, going on night patrol with long, curved, razor-sharp knives, returning with bags full of the heads of enemy sentries. You remembered, with pride and humor, the Japanese hookers calling you and every other GI on leave, Ichiban Joe. Your eyes sparkled as you retold the story of how you beat the shit out of a big beefy Australian in a boxing match. You related the fear and guilt you felt the night you knocked a Halmoni cold with the butt of your rifle after she came screaming at you from the dark, scaring the tar out of you. Halmoni's an old lady. You described the organized panic the day the Chinese swarmed over the hills like ants, requiring your division to blow their guns and beat a southern retreat, spending half the night hiding in a water-filled ditch as the Reds marched by. You were a country boy at war, and you wished you didn't have those stories to tell. I got another one. From your era.
You know your own era, that's bad.
Do you know Reggie Shell? Do you know Reggie Shell? He's a Vietnam vet in this area. I met him when I was working at break time over in Owensville. We met in a convenience, it's called Reg. We met in a convenience store, him buying lottery tickets and me ringing him up. He asked me if I like books, not knowing that books are one of the few things I live for. He was mentioned in a book about soldiers in Vietnam's Mekong Delta. He was part of hardcore Recondo under Colonel Hacksworth in the late 60s, and he gifted me with a copy. A fascinating and harrowing read. Since then, he's told me some stories about the war that I won't relate here. Those are stories that he is still dealing with. Like many of the men sucked into that fracas, retelling those stories would be like putting his pain and nightmares on display, and that would be skeevy. He did tell me one story, however, I feel I can share. Reg likes to play golf, but Reg is also a country boy and a battle-tempered soldier. So it came as no real surprise when he told me that he used to carry an air rifle in his golf bag, and when nobody was looking, he'd shoot squirrels and put them in his bag, take them home and cook them up. I can't relate to the horrors of war, thankfully. losing friends on a battlefield far from home, living in mud and filth and disease, never knowing if you'd ever get out alive. But I can relate to bending rules and enjoying a meal of fried squirrel. Reg doesn't do much squirrel killing these days. He prefers to feed them outside his kitchen window, getting a kick out of how much they've come to trust him. The Vietnam War is long over, the squirrels have nothing to fear from Reg, and the world keeps turning. I said I moved into this thing because I went a little whatever, and then after that, when I was well enough, I went back to Korea to teach, and I stayed until COVID shut down all the jobs. But when I went back, I knew a bunch of monks there, and I went back there to work and also to kind of finish putting stuff back together, because the monks are good at that. So I went back and, but this is one about my first contact with the monks in Korea, the Buddhist monks. It's called Mountain Monks. My very first residence in Seoul was in Sadang, at the foot of Kwanak Mountain. Kwanak is fairly small as far as mountains go, and it's craggy, and it's covered in pine trees. It was right outside my door, so naturally I walked up Kwanak dozens of times. On one of my first forays, I found a small Buddhist temple and monastery, not 20 minutes from my place. I don't know what the permanent population of the complex was, but each time I went there, I found a couple of dozen gray-clad bald monks. When they weren't meditating or tending the grounds, these guys were exercising, lifting weights mostly. After a while, I started lifting weights with them. They had some store-bought free weights, but a lot of the equipment was homemade. They used cinder blocks, concrete poured in buckets, car and truck wheels, anything they could make a matching pair out of. I don't know how heavy this stuff was. You just find something you could handle and you'd start doing reps. They didn't keep track of anything. They just exercised until they got tired. And they were a strong bunch with all that exercise and their vegetarianism, as well as the abstinence from tobacco and alcohol and fast food and women. Most of them had six-pack abs, but they were kind, gentle guys. This was most noticeable when they were tending to the abandoned pets that overran the complex, rabbits, dogs, cats, and turtles mostly. People just dumped them at the entrance and the monks took them in, no questions asked. It was an interesting environment. You'd be sitting there, resting between arm curl reps, and a dog or a cat would jump up in your lap. Rabbits would follow you around, and turtles swam up to say hello when you sat by the courtyard ponds. The monks were always smiling and friendly. I could only handle that in doses of 2 or 3 hours. As soon as I left the complex, I'd light a cigarette and go in search of the other things that made me smile. Being perfect isn't for everyone. Those guys got it right. I have one more. It's called extrapolation. These nicotine pouches right out your mouth. Sorry. Last night I watched the final episode of Northern Exposure and ate a barbecue pulled pork sandwich. It was pretty nice. So I got to thinking about what had to happen to make that nice scenario of mine occur. My parents had to meet and procreate. My grandparents had to meet and procreate. My great-grandparents had to meet and procreate, and so on. And all the while, they were moving from state to state, from continent to continent, going way back. My ancestors were hunting mastodons on European plains. Did they have barbecue pulled mastodon sandwiches? But take the ego out of the mix for a second. What about the farmers that raised the pigs? The generations of farmers and generations of pigs that culminated in my barbecue pulled pork sandwich. The people at the slaughterhouse, the processing plant, the sauce factory, the bread factory, the factory that made the wrapper around the sandwich. The trees that went into making wrappers. The generations of trees that led up to the tree that gave itself up to be wrappers around barbecue pulled pork sandwiches. A bunch of Hollywood producers and writers got together, people from their own generations, maybe mixed with my own, came up with the premise of a show. They wrote the show, hired the actors, hired the crew, grips and best boys, gophers and caterers, director's assistants, and people of every trade in construction to make a show about a doctor going to Alaska. I watched the show on a Samsung television made by Koreans. How many generations of Koreans, descendants of Mongolians, went into the development and production of my television? Did their ancestors and my ancestors ever meet on an ancient battlefield, fighting it out over who knows what for who knows who? If the fight had gone differently, would I even be here? When my TV came off the production line, it was inspected, packed, shipped to a warehouse in Incheon or Busan, loaded on a ship bound for Los Angeles or Seattle, or maybe it went through the Panama Canal to arrive in New Jersey or Boston or New York. All those people operating ships and canals and trucks and equipment. It took hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of people and trees and pigs and a billion little decisions by myself and others to arrive at the nice scenario in which I sit and watch the final episode of Northern Exposure and eat a barbecue pulled pork sandwich.
Well, you've come a long way since the 73 Nomad.
Oh, have I?
There were no pulled pork sandwiches back then, I'm
No, there
sure.
weren't. And if there was, it was frozen.
Trip over this thing. All right, Jason Reber, since you're alive and well, gonna have you come up here and read some poems.
Okay, then.
I'm not vouching for your mental fitness, but
Well.
physically. I was telling people about the spill that you took in Utah.
Hey, thanks, man.
Of course.
Appreciate that.
Of course.
You forget, I was there. And you took one too.
Yeah, I know, and you tried to help me, and that was a disaster.
Some kind of metaphor for something. Kind of like that toy from back when we were kids that was nothing really but a coil of cheap metal spring that could stroll around seemingly under its own power, down a flight of stairs or a ladder, or from hand to hand with someone easily bemused by distractions like this. A toddler maybe, but just as likely, a teenage girl, stoned out of her gourd down in her parents' basement. The toy is some kind of metaphor for something, I suppose. Too many poems about. So far, I'm just not convinced that there is such a thing as too many poems about stars, meteors, satellites, the moon, spy planes, and or UFOs crossing night skies above a world that's teeming with streetlights, headlights, porch lights, Christmas lights left up year-round, fireflies, cigarettes, sparks and embers from backyard barbecues, any or all of it rendered earnestly again and again for us to ooh and ah at each time. Hauling ass. A long, empty road taking us away from our past lives of only hours ago, and the sinking sun in the rearview mirror like a burning ship pulling the whole sky down with it into the briny deep of night, leaving us a wall of black clouds dead ahead, cracked here and there with slivers of lightning above a train that's hauling ass along the dark edge of the world. Something like normal. An old tree limb cracking somewhere out there in the deep wood somehow intensifies the sharp power of the stars, the darkness between them and all around us, and the stillness and silence that always follows until we are startled by the next rude intrusion, be it a cow bellowing in the distance or whippoorwill, and then everything settles on back down to something like normal, whatever that is. Nothing but wind and grass. A sweat bee is cleaning its antenna in the morning sun, while a butterfly is flexing its wings like lungs, like bellows, waiting for just the right current of wind to come along and climb onto. And it appears that the sky's particular frequency of blue today is going to be somewhere between cornflower and swimming pool, with a few clouds here and there, and you'd think that the odds would be pretty good for there being at least one nameless bunch of bones that used to be a person, buried out in this field or one like it somewhere, maybe a rock or a cow skull placed there for a headstone. Maybe a tree from a seed planted down there with them, in which a lone crow is now reposing. Or maybe there's nothing to mark this final resting place. Maybe it's just wind and grass for miles in every direction. Black umbrella. Dusk now, and a murder of crows has settled down for the evening to occupy this little, stony, inner city ghost town of a graveyard, long grown over with weeds and wildflowers. And a black umbrella is wafting and twirling above the treetops on a current of wind. And the guy on the radio is saying someone just tried to rob the get and go with an old caulking gun. Thank you.
Because this was up here before, I'm having a hard time knowing like who signed this like 2 months ago or whatever. Let's see here. All right. I'm just gonna have John Clayton come up here. John, would you prefer this chair? Is
No,
that-
I'll just sit right here.
Okay.
I decided I was going to read a short story tonight, and then I got to thinking, well, maybe it's going to take too much time. So I read it and it took too much time. So I'm going to read a different short story. And I'm also going to start out with a piece by Mike James.
Oh, wonderful.
Mike didn't title all of his work. Sometimes he just wrote it, and apparently that's what he did with this. Give me a washcloth, and I will find a river to dip it in. I will bathe in memory and in loss. Whenever the sky seems bluer than the river, remember, you only swim towards dirt. I can't tell you all the places I've been. Memory holds less geography, more loss. Here's a wish for a young me. Don't be so serious. Swim in the communion cup. Curse in your prayers. This poem might be less useful than a dirty joke. There may be less wisdom, fewer good images. I'm afraid of all exit signs, though I love any abandoned factory, house, or ghost town, almost every broken window. An exit sign offers one way out, just like the river. A broken window might lead to an alley, to another dark room. Mike James, good guy. When my children were small, I used to tell them stories.
I can attest.
And when Elizabeth was grown, she asked me to try to write down some of those stories that I told, so I did. And this is one of them. My children always knew where their food came from because we raised poultry and chickens and cows and pigs and we ate them. So some people might find this a little bit offensive if they don't know where their food came from. But anyway, It's called the watch turkey. His name was Thomas Turkey. He was a brute of a bird, big, very big, twice as tall and twice as broad as any other turkey in the yard. His feathers were glossy black, turning to bronze near the ends, with a tiny little white streak at the very tip. His head was red with a hint of blue in places. On either side of his head sat little shiny black eyes, like little pieces of coal. One who did not properly appreciate his role in the world might say they were beady. His wattle trailed down 3 or 4 inches. Tom's beard, yes, what a beard it was. Long, very long. It was a beard that reminds one of the long, unruly beard of the abolitionist John Brown. His legs and thighs were like posts, and his feet were large. His toes were a little crooked, but his spurs were a sight to behold. Long, very long, and slightly curved. Occasionally, they clicked together when he walked. Everyone just called him Tom, because Thomas was a bit formal since he was known so well by all the family. Tom was the boss of the farm, boss of the farmyard. He knew it, and all the other animals knew it too. Tom decided where he would eat when the corn was thrown out. Where Tom went, no other bird dared to tread. When an upstart challenged him, Tom's disposition turned foul. You might think this is an account of a bird that ruled only the barnyard, but it's not. Tom was king of the entire farm, including the front and backyards. There was no real concern about chicken hawks or foxes, because Tom did not run when an intruder dared to come too close. He met each challenge head-on with zeal. He adhered to the military theory that the best defense is an aggressive offense. Tom practiced what he gobbled. When a misdirected predator approached Tom's kingdom, he would turn to face them. His wings would go down to the ground and his giant tail would unfurl into a magnificent fan. His long neck would stretch out, and a thundering gobble that began deep within his breast would rumble forth. If after such a warning the foolish intruder was still present, the assault would begin. Slowly at first, with momentum building, Tom would charge. Like a Cape buffalo, Tom would crash into the misdirected trespasser. Usually Tom's look would knock most chicken stealers off their feet. Tom would hop on top of them in a flash and put his feet to work. Many a stray dog and fox left with their tail between their legs. Tom's problems began when, like humans, his power went to his head. There came a time when he failed to distinguish humans from other trespassers. When a car pulled into the drive, Tom would meet it and challenge its occupants if they tried to get out. For adults, Tom's misdirected conduct was a mere annoyance, but for small children, it was a terrifying and sometimes dangerous encounter. After several such confrontations, Tom's future changed from watch turkey to Thanksgiving dinner. The moral of this story, if it has one, is be careful how you use your power, because there will always be someone with more power than you.
Was that a true story? Because I don't know.
Actually, all my stories have
A grain?
a little truth to them. But, you know, writers take the privilege of embellishing some things.
That's right. Jason Rebert's whole catalog, embellished. But, Caitlin, did you want to read today?
Yeah.
Okay. Come up, Caitlin, go.
Take my seat bird around, sorry. The first thing I want to say, just kind of as a wrap up, is all of you should know by now that there's a ramp on the bookstore, so that's great. Tony and I managed to close out the account. We did have excess funds in the amount of $1,118.58, and that went to Friends of the Belle Library to continue doing work on the bookstore. So they have those funds to use as they see fit now.
Thank you.
With that, I'm going to read some newer pieces. And yes, I stole this title from a Garth Brooks song. It's called If Tomorrow Never Comes. Time may be infinite, but the amount we are graced with is uncertain and much too short. So make sure you know what's important. Say the words that you need to say. Spend as much time as possible with those you love. And find the things in this world that make you happy, and then chase them. Not the things that are done out of arbitrary obligation. Find the balance between life and work, and then tip the scale toward living. Do nothing half-assed and only with your full heart, because when tomorrow never comes, it's too late, and regret is a hard thing to live with and die with. The next one I'm going to read is called Battling the Unknown. You're going to see a theme tonight, and I apologize. Battling the unknown is an internal war, a war in which you must simultaneously prepare for everything and nothing. A battle where the foe is hidden, a puppet master pulling invisible threads that cause pain and heartache, that cause worry and stress, an internal storm of emotion that is uncontrollable. Often this war leaves you feeling as if you're battling melee style at each and everything coming your way. It's ineffective. And it causes you to drain your precious reserves, but it's the only choice that you have when it comes to fighting against the unknown. To fight against the unknown is ingrained in who we are as people. We resist change at all costs. We must not let the adversary get the upper hand. We hold small flickers of hope, a hope that our enemy will make a mistake, at last unmasking itself, and a real battle strategy can commence. The problem only being, will there still be enough fight left to win? The next one is called Dry Drowning. I think I've read this one here before, but dry drowning. Inside of you, a wall is carefully crafted brick by brick by brick, cemented through grief, anguish, hardships, life experiences you were taught to lock away. Pieces of yourself you felt the need to hide with a precision placement to wall off these hard-to-feel feelings. Cutting the vulnerable parts of you off from the rest of you, meant to ensure no one sees the hurt, the pain, the tortured anguish wrought through years of living. You call it protecting yourself. The reality being that suffocation of your empathetic side. Because behind the wall, a tidal wave of uncried tears, outward signs you deemed showed weakness instead of the tenacity to keep going that they really were. Your will to push beyond the hard moments manifest in tear streaks down your face as the wall begins to buckle, allowing you to cry the tears before you drown from holding them inside. And the last one I'll leave you with is called Grieving to Healing. Get mad. Be sad, feel the pain and the hurt, and then let it go. Don't obsess over what was, what is, what could be, or what could have been. Process it, then heal from it. Repeat as often as is required for your healing journey. Compare your process to no one else's. To go from grieving to healing is not a linear line. It includes spirals, setbacks, and progress, and will never look like someone else's.
read his,
Makes me so happy that you keep doing that.
I've read his work before here. I'm going to read it again. This is something new that he has had published recently. It's Robert Okaji. He was diagnosed with late-stage lung cancer going on about 2 years ago now. He's still with us. Right now he's on chemotherapy because more lesions have been found in his brain. But, yeah. The poem is titled, Waiting for the Call. Another fractured night. Up at 4, I grow sleepy at 10, which pisses me off. I'm not far from that eternal sleep, so wasting my day nodding off annoys the hell out of me, which is what his dying is all about. One fat package of annoyance, festooned with ribbons woven from frustration, false hope, and frazzled nerves. Will I be allowed in a clinical trial which might extend my life? Or will I simply expire, my body ravaged by those terrorist cells? Because there's no room for me. So that's Robert Okaji, and he says that he's tried to get into 3 or 4 different clinical trials, and that particular one, he was accepted, and then lesions were found in his brain, so the cancer disqualified him for a clinical trial on cancer. Yeah, and that's kind of ironic, isn't it? All right. I brought some aids up here with me to show you something, but I'm going to start out with this. A complicated relationship. Demand for words removed. Pressure released. Words do not listen, bidden or not. Flow when they will. Play coy when sought. Despite. Desire meaningless. Masters of their own fate. So, yeah, I haven't been writing a lot lately, so I get a little frustrated sometimes. Now, this one actually happened. It was 2 months ago, and I'm feeling better. I was feeling better after a couple days. Footloose. Flat on my back. Not a stitch to my name. Parts skewed in all odd directions. One leg splayed over the side of the tub, the other pointing at the faucet. Thankful that nothing is broken as I stare up at the shower head and think of how embarrassed I'd be 40 years ago if anyone saw this. But how, right now, I'd be grateful for a hand to get back on my feet. Because I was in and out at the same time, and it right on my cheek. Boy, that hurt. Okay, summer of '67. Railroad tracks, walking to school, balanced on the rails, leaving our mark, watching the ties the next day for flattened pennies, panning for copper in my 14th year. Late summer nights, walking the streets, the tracks, when parents thought the sleeping bags in the yard held boys tired from a long day of daylight antics. Climbing the train bridge, and that's where the age should come in. Climbing the train bridge over the canal in the dark across iron beams and up a narrow ladder to sit atop the concrete counterweight platform for daylight's brave divers. Back to school, last year of junior high, no more summers, none like that in the future, maybe a penny or 2, more when I can spare a dime. I grew up in Tonawanda and North Tonawanda. They're right on the Erie Canal, one on either side of the other, and just between Niagara Falls and Buffalo. And this is what the bridge looked like. And that cement block on the left there is about the size of a house. And yeah, kids dive off of that bridge to dive into the canal.
Tonawanda is one of the professional bowling capitals in the United States.
Is it really? Yeah. That's what the bridge looks like.
And when was that bridge built?
It's called a cantilever bridge, and they built it in 1919 because they thought they were going to accommodate all the bridges on the canal. They have any boats with masts, and then they realized how expensive it was going to be, so the bridge was never raised except to be tested. So yeah. Okay. Now I'm going to read two from Glass of Wash and two from Harrisburg. My collection's from Spartan Press. Ruby-throated fondness. Hazel eyes, always dancing, even in age-slowed years. Transient after transient, accumulated. Reperfusion, less effective with each occurrence. Thoughts, movements scattered, inconsistency. Distant past, light gone, not forgotten. Hazel dances in my mind, triggered by a thought, a word, a sight of you. There sparkle across the floor of my mind. A hummingbird hovers at the feeder. My mother loved hummingbirds. And on holding nothing. Behind me, decades. Around me, the same. Past and present as one. Something a long time coming does not bring acceptance in the blink of an eye. Harmony can be deceptive. The underlying discord woven through ours for those same decades was easier to dismiss than to face head on. Holding on to something that was long gone, I wandered, lonely as clouded skies that held only darkness. When I realized the darkness was behind me, the decades slipped away, revealing blue skies. Thank you. And then Inherent Spirit, Blackbird Rising. Lens framing the rising sun, I turn at the sound of a trill. Redwing clings to tall grass, wary of my presence. Greeted by a stunning image in the glow of morning's light, my lens pivots to capture the beauty of a perfect pose. Framing and focus seem only a matter of seconds. Avian patience, exhausted. Its wings are lost in the rising sun. And below, first few years when anytime my children came to visit, we'd take them to different caves in Missouri, because Missouri's known for caves. Yeah. Below, dark as night, no light from any source. Of course, all of that will change. Rearrange your perspective. Give yourself a second. When first light slowly builds, will yourself to see. Leave the dark behind. Find shapes and colors that abound underground within our earth, worth each moment spent there. Where water slips from the ceiling, healing the open space, placing columns randomly beneath our very feet. Completely hidden spaces, places grand as cathedrals in size. Memorize the sights, lights fading as you leave into sunlight. I'm going to read some random lists before I step away. I have a couple of new ones actually, but first off, I'll start off with Driving Off Minor, which is actually in No One Sees the Irony from Cascade Review, and was nominated for a pushcart, so I think that was great. Driving Off Minor. Monk spars with Coltrane, weaves around and through him. They roll along amid lightning strikes that illuminate the dark sky. Mist rises from the road's surface in this dusk of mid-afternoon on a gray April day, with light rain that is reflected, multiplied, rises to join that mist from the tires of passing cars before joining the sheen of the road's surface in my headlights. The sky before me opens to reveal a road not so dark and hazards behind me. Monk's piano never off. Minor discordance trails off to better roads. Thank you. Okay, so these two are new ones, and then I'm done. They're, one is in reference to my drive home from St. Louis when I like to say released, but I guess I was discharged from the hospital. And, yeah. The music I had in mind for this was Brubeck's Blue Rondo a la Turk. Piano starts off fast, joined by alto sax, almost racing, both trying to be first one out the door. You're right there with them. After nearly 3 weeks, it's time to get as far from that hospital as possible. Piano and sax take turns urging you on. It's 126 miles. Let's get a move on. Home is waiting for you. Pack your bags. Make that one. It may be 18 days, but the clothes you started with will get you home. Load it into the truck. The sax seems to be the first to understand as Paul Desmond slows the pace. Brubeck's piano still nudging you. It's a slow climb into the truck as you pause to catch your breath. Underlying bass and drums finally pull the piano in line with the sax. You're a passenger today. First time in a very long time. Relax. Seat back, feet up. Let that combo seep into you as it seems to stroll along right next to, into you. Let it set the pace for you on that long ride home. Thank you. And then the last one is After the Rain. We had a really dear friend who had passed away, Erie. And when you're on Lake Erie and those waves are crashing in the winter, this ice just builds up in big, huge amounts because it just keeps pushing out of the shore. And I was there in the winter. After the Rain. Piano opens with a crash, trails off to reveal percussion and bass lying just below it. A friend is gone, and the moment is empty. Revealing the sax, like a lament, holding the hope that left with him. An icy shore scoured by bitter winds holds no memories. Piano comes forward as if holding light after a storm, and the sax takes a lighter tone. Come the spring rain, voice and thoughts once lost will return. The cymbal's last sound is a gentle parting as sax and piano trail off, as if Coltrane knows everything will be all right.
Last call for alcohol. Does anybody want to get on this list? Anybody's not already on here. All right, then I'm just going to reiterate that we will be back here February 22nd, which is Saturday at 6 o'clock. And I will be happy to see you all again when we're here. Thank you again for being out here. And then March, we'll pick up with the features, and that'll run at least till November, maybe December. We'll see what the weather does. But it's always usually March to November. So, Brenda, I was going to tell you, years ago, Ann Medbrook and I were at a friend's birthday party, and they had flourless chocolate cake. And the waiter made a really big deal about how chocolate is really good for your heart. And then, so she and I were like, well, we guess we're doing cardio right now. and so anybody who knows me knows that's a true story. I love chocolate and I love sugar way too much. But, all right. But thank you guys for being here. Thanks so much.
John, I was on the list.
What's that?
I was on the list, and
I can't hear you.
I was on the list, and I would actually like to read before you send everybody home.
Oh, did you not read?
No.
Oh, then come up and read. We talked, and it just didn't occur to me that I didn't have you read yet. I'm like, okay, we already spoke. That's just me.
Okay.
It's kind of warm in here, and I'm a little out of it, but
Okay.
welcome.
Well, thank you. So I'm going to read a poem from somebody else. That's the poem about which I cried the most times. So I don't know if that makes it my favorite poem, but it's Laura Gilpin, The Two-Headed Calf. Tomorrow, when the farm boys find this freak of nature, they will wrap his body in newspaper and carry him to the museum. But tonight, he is alive and in a north field with his mother. It is the perfect summer evening, the moon rising over the orchard, the wind in the grass. And as he stares into the sky, there are twice as many stars as usual. So I'm going to start with something that we have a new semester, and sometimes the semester goes well, and sometimes the semester sucks because it's the administration that makes us crazy. And I had a tantrum a while back when our associate dean said, a student has complained that my videos are too old, and I have to go and update everyone and remove the copyright slide so that it appears as if they are current. Now folks, I teach Newtonian physics, and Newton has been dead 300 years. This poem is entitled Newton's Cat, or My Lectures Are Not Outdated. My ears ring with the erratic demands that they find ridiculous. I'm inclined to decline further assignments. I want to resign. Sick of leaning in, I recline and fantasize about operatic tantrums I will not throw, because I am sane enough to know that to show my irritation would change nothing. Instead, I throw on a sweater and head outside. I wield the hedge trimmer like a sword, slash at arbor vitae, and you pile branches high on a wheelbarrow. Much depends on it, that trusty conveyance of refuse to the compost. I rage against the machine and the puppet masters before dutifully resuming the tedious task of updating information that is neither expired nor outdated, just published a while ago. Oh, the curse of the internet, where longevity is a flaw and everything must be new and shiny and in fashion, dresses as well as ideas, but Sir Isaac has been dead 300 years. And boxes still slide down inclines, and jumping cats still follow parabolic trajectories, if they are not resting on a bed or a chair, in which case the net force they feel is still zero, just as it was 300 years ago when Newton's cat laid himself down on the paper Newton was writing on. Because cats were the same back then too, and nothing about their behavior requires updating. So that is just going to be part of a new collection that I'm excited about that should get done this spring. We had snow. Here's a poem about snow. It's entitled You Can't Smell the Snow. In the bushes by the porch, cardinals seek respite from the chill, puff up and huddle, their plumage bright red in the snow. The feeder hangs abandoned, the suet frozen to a brick. Within a minute, the wind buries my footprints in snow. I sacrifice my longing for permanence to appease the wrath of unknown gods. Nothing will last, not even the snow. Ice crystals feather the window pane, grow flowers and ferns. If I scrape them away, all I have is a small pile of snow. Face the quiet, the knowing. There is no one you can appeal to. Only the night, the stars, the air so cold you can't smell the snow. kill a sheep ever. I would have loved to watch you graze on the meadow, drink from the creek, suckle your lamb. I would have loved to hear you bleat. I would have sunk my hand into your wool and stroked your head. I would never buy a fur coat. But when I was 16, Mom gave me her coat, the one she had gotten as a present from her uncle. It has been 50 years since you died, and your fleece is warm. We took good care of it, keep it clean, free from moth. I have worn it on a winter trip to Russia, in the German mountains, and here in the Ozarks. I'm 56 now. My own daughter is a vegan and would never want fur, even as a gift. But what better way to honor you than to wear the coat year after year, filled with gratitude at the warmth it gives me on a bitter winter day, cozier than the fancy synthetic North Face sweater. Yesterday I walked in single-digit weather. The coat covered me down to my ankles, and I thought of you, nameless sheep, who has been forgotten by anyone else. And I thank you that you gave your life to keep me warm. And in writing group yesterday, I wrote a sappy poem, and it's in form, which I normally don't do, but it was fun, and it's so that's my comment on the current situation. It's called And Yet. The ground is frozen now, and yet I know there will be spring. Wildflowers will amaze us with their bloom. Vines will weave ribbons around trees. Branches leave out green winds. The night is inky black, and yet I know there will be dawn. An orchestra of birds will serenade the rising of the sun, not asking, is it worth it, but just sing. The stream is raging fast, and yet I know there is a way to cross. If there's no ford, then I will place a row of stepping stones, drag rocks into the shallows, build a bridge. It's this philosophy I must embrace. Keep expectations high. Do not resign to panic and despair. Stay calm and sane, and nurse the seedlings of a juster world. Thank you.
Again, I apologize, Agnes.
No.
It's warm and it's warm in here, and I could curl up in that chair right now, like a cat. But all right. That is now the end of that. I apologize to everyone. What do you need, Gary?
I didn't get to read it.
You did. Don't give me shit. You go back to your 73 Nomad. No one's bringing you any barbecue sandwiches, Gary. No one. All right. You can read February 18th. You wait until then, and I will come see you so I can give you a hard time.
Oh, great.
You expect it.
asked for it.
All right. So you're all paroled. Get out of here. We're done. Thank you. I appreciate seeing everybody.
Thanks, Jen.
Thanks, Jen.
Thank you, John.
Thanks.